Hey there. Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 264 is titled The Fridkis Bros Talk with Heidi.
Hey everyone, this is Corinne Smith here from the William S. Haynes Company. I'm excited to introduce to you an exciting new initiative that is available now to flute teachers. Introducing Club 88 for educators. We know that educators like you provide the inspiration and enthusiasm for the next generation of flutists. We literally couldn't do it without you. So we have made Club 88 for Educators an exclusively inclusive club for flute teachers all around the world. Club 88 for Educators offers a specially tailored selection of perks and benefits we can offer you for spreading your love for all things Haynes. These benefits include discount on Haynes merch, the opportunity to earn Haynes dollars to purchase goods, services, and events, a community forum where you can share ideas, tips, and tricks and stay connected with the Haynes family of educators, free shipping on studio samplers within the continental United States, priority scheduling for Haynes University classes, and invitations to exclusive Club 88 events at festivals and conventions around the world. We believe that teaching should be more rewarding, and with Club 88 for Educators from Haynes, it will be. To find out more information and to sign up to start earning your rewards today, visit our website at wmshaynes.com/Club 88.
Well, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you carving out time, and I can't wait to have fun and pick your brains.
Yeah, same.
Yeah? Cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Gabe's demeanor just went like this.
I'm good.
I'll be polite. I'll be very gentle.
I'm not going to... Yeah, no, it was an outside okay. Thing. I just heard a sound. It's fine.
Okay. No, you're good. So this is a special treat because Jake is a returning guest on Flute 360. And that first talk was really cool because we got to do an in-person interview. And I don't know if you know this, Jake, but I rarely get to do those. And when I was living in Fort Worth, you were so sweet to say, hey, let's just do it at my apartment. And that was really sweet because the in-person talks have a different feel than a remote talk. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with that one, because we had to go through all the competition music. So it was helpful to have the scores in front of us.
Yeah, good memory. And I don't know if you remember this, but that day, I will never forget, Eric, I had just changed speaking of laundry, I had just changed the laundry detergent and the drying sheets for our laundry loads. And apparently Eric is very sensitive to certain perfumes and stuff, my husband. And he totally broke out in the biggest hives of all time. And by the time our interview ended, Jake, he had these huge welts on the side of his head.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, They were like this big. And we're like,
I didn't even notice.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, they were red and itchy and they were huge. And we had to figure it out. And we're like, oh no, it's the Snuggle Bear dryer sheets.
Yeah. No, those things can get you.
Not
you
buy
never
those
know.
dryer sheets.
Yeah, you gotta be. You never know with whatever they put in them.
Yeah, if you Google it, apparently it's a thing that people are like highly allergic to, like the perfume and the dye that they put into those sheets. So buyer beware.
Never know. Yeah, I mean, some people have severe perfume allergies. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
When I was an undergrad, when I was doing my master's auditions, I got like a whole new set of like clothes for all my auditions, and I didn't wash any of them. And then I like went on, I had this like tour of like 3 auditions. I was like on the road for like 10 days. And
You
like
might
the
want to
first
preface this
audition,
by saying you didn't watch any of them before wearing them.
I didn't watch any of them before wearing them. Yeah, did I say that? I watched them after, for sure. Yeah, no, I still haven't watched them. And I got like a terrible case of like contact dermatitis. Like my whole body was just like super itchy. So then like the rest of these auditions, I was just very itchy. I did wash the clothes. They were fine after that, but maybe that's another warning. Wash your clothes, especially before an audition. You don't want to be like, itching your way through Mozart exposition.
These are the heavy hitting facts that we're going to cover
Yeah,
today.
right. That's the wisdom from the Flute Bros. Wash your clothes before your audition.
Just remember to wash your clothes. It's important.
Practice your scales. Wash your clothes, and you'll be all right.
I love that. Well, when we get to that question, Gabe, you won't have to give your answer because you've basically fulfilled that question.
Just cut this one in.
Oh, shoot. I love that. Well, before we talk about more audition tips, let's talk about y'all's background and just give the listeners a baseline so that way they get to know you that much better. So, Jake, if you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we can dive into some more questions.
Sure. Well, I guess my background is I started playing the penny whistle when I was like 5 years old. There was a local teacher who was really great, and I think we heard my mom, not me, I was 5. My mom must have heard from friends that this woman was a really great teacher. So I signed up for a group class and I started playing penny whistle. And then she also taught flute. So then when I was like 6.5, I started learning Suzuki flute. And I with the same teacher, Sandy Olson, I learned with her for a couple years. And then I switched to another teacher, Jill Crawford, who was actually Gabe's first teacher. And then I started studying with Gary Shocker when I was a little bit older. I studied with him all through high school and for part of the time also with Jeff Kaner. And then I went to Cleveland Institute of Music with Josh Smith, and then Yale with Ransom. And in the meantime, I was studying with Mark Sparks a lot at Aspen and also flying out privately to see him and going during the summers. He was a big influence of both of ours. And when I was in my last year at Yale, I won principal flute in the South Dakota Symphony. And I went out there for a couple months, and then I won my job in Fort Worth a couple months after that. And I've been here ever since. So, this is my 7th season in Fort Worth coming up, I think, officially 7. I think I started a little bit earlier, but it wasn't a full season or something. But yeah, so that's my whole story.
I love that. I don't think you mentioned the penny whistle in episode 44.
Yeah, somebody asked me the other day if I started on recorder, and I was like, no, I started on penny whistle, and then I had kind of forgotten about that. But penny whistle, underrated instrument. There's a lot of great James Galway playing penny whistle moments in recording.
Some of the best.
Yeah, it's got to check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool.
So for me, that was the next question.
Go for it.
Yeah, a lot of similarities in the beginning, right? Also, whistle and then recorder. I studied with Jill Crawford, who's an amazing teacher out of Princeton, New Jersey. And then I also switched to Gary when I was probably 13 or 14. Studied with him through high school. I actually took some time off of music. I initially went to American University in Washington, D.C., and I played in the orchestra, but I was studying like business. I did that for 3 years, and then I wanted to switch back to music, so I transferred to SUNY Purchase and studied with Tara O'Connor. So I did 3 years there and got my undergrad.
The new teacher at Yale.
Yeah, right. The new teacher at Yale, Tara O'Connor.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah. So she's an absolutely incredible teacher. I was really lucky to have the opportunity, to work with her. Anyway, after that, I started my master. I did my master's at DePaul with Mark Sparks. Concurrently, I was playing in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago while I was doing those 2 years. And then after my first year in DePaul, I won a local job in the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, which is in Indianapolis. So I was doing that for the second year of DePaul along with Civic. And I guess at the next fall, the fall after I finished my master's, I won this job, the assistant principal job in Fort Worth. that was, I guess, 4 seasons. This is my 4th season, I believe. I started in the middle of the season. Also, I started in January of, I guess, 2019. Basically got a full year in before COVID. I think it was like just about 1 year for me. I think that's it. I think that's pretty much the story.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I really like hearing both of your backstories literally back to back, because you can see how much of a crossover there is with, the upbringing and the teachers and the inspiration. So go back to young Gabe and young Jake. Was it the initial plan, or was it a plan to support each other for that orchestral goal? Like, did both of you guys have that orchestral dream of being flutists in the symphony? And you guys were kind of like supporting each other towards that goal and working specifically with people like Mark Sparks, who was, through the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I think it's really neat how, it's rare, I think, to have such high level playing siblings play the same instrument under the same teacher and kind of forge similar paths. And I just wanted to know how much Jake, I almost said Jabe. I wonder how much Gabe and Jake influenced each other towards that orchestral goal.
I can say from my perspective, Jake was a major influence on me for that. I don't know about the other way around, probably not. But I think when I got back into music and went to Purchase, it wasn't like, I just really wanted to play flute again. Like I wanted to get back into that. And then I was kind of seeing what Jake was doing in his career. Like he was starting to work with Mark a lot. He was starting to, take auditions and do all of that stuff. And then I think that first year, so then I was like, okay, I want to play music. That's why I went back to music school. And I think by the end of that first year, I was really kind of focused in on like, okay, now I want to do orchestra. And that's why at the end of that summer, I actually went to Aspen because I wanted to play more in orchestra and kind of get that experience. So I can say like this, very, very much so, my path like into the orchestral world was kind of following in Jake's footsteps for sure.
That is cool.
I think, there's definitely like a year where I think I was like at the end of my master's about to do an artist diploma at Yale. And I was like, okay, I can either go freelance. I was, freelance in New York was an option. And I was doing some stuff there. But I didn't really see any financial stability there. For me, at least, I didn't have like a lot of amazing financial opportunities in front of me as a freelance flutist. And so I just kind of really dug into orchestral stuff and was really focused. And that was right around the same time that Gabe started getting back into flute. So at that point, I was like very focused on, okay, I have 1 year, got to win a job. So he probably caught the that little bit of obsessive time period in my life of really going after these auditions. And I think that's really important for, taking auditions, is you kind of need that focus time where you say, okay, I'm just going to do this right now. And I think, once, we've been in orchestra for a while, now you see there's so many, there's lots of career paths out there. But when you're in school, there's not quite as many things open to you. So I think at that point it was like, I need to win a job. Otherwise, I don't know how I'm going to support myself. So, the orchestral path was kind of the way. So that was my choice. And then I think we both really loved playing in orchestra, and Mark was a huge influence for us to learn about the rep and kind of like really get into it. And honestly, now I don't think that there's anything that I would rather do than play an orchestra, just because I love the rep. But kind of lucked into it a little bit, learning throughout pushing myself and working, together to learn about all this stuff.
Yeah. And I definitely like to highlight again for both of us, like how influential, like seeing Mark's relationship with his job and the way that the kind of like respect and reverence that he has for the job of an orchestral flutist. Taking it so seriously artistically and like bringing his A game every day for, however many 30 years that he was in various orchestras. I think that was super inspiring for me. At a fairly, even if it wasn't actually a young age, because of the little gap, like a young, after my first year of conservatory, to get to work with him and see that modeled to me, like, okay, like I want to do that. Like, I want to be like that. Of course, not to take anything away from, like, I think like Tara, like, rehabilitated my relationship with the instrument, which is so important. And maybe Mark showed me like a career path forward,
That's amazing. And that's why I love being an educator, is having that influence on the younger generation. Because when I was young, I remember similar feelings like what you guys are portraying about Mark Sparks, is looking at a mentor and going, oh my gosh, I want to be that. I want to do what she's doing, And so what's crazy is, and I love hearing it, we know this, but it's a great reminder of how much a mentor or an instructor can have that influence on you as a young flutist or as a budding flutist figuring out what that path is. So Gabe had already mentioned how Mark influenced him, bringing his A game, bringing the artistry to the table, things like that. Is there anything else that specifically Mark did for your budding new orchestral minds? And Jake and Gabe, you can both answer this question, but is there something specific? Because I know, like, the different teachers I've had along the path, I can specifically say, oh, this person really brought out XYZ. This teacher brought out ABC. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what specifically Mark did for you to go, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do.
Well, for me, like, specifically how I play the flute is very much from Mark. A lot of what I do on flute is fundamentally Mark Sparks. So he really has shaped every little bit of how I play, which I'm very lucky for. And then obviously my other teachers also. It's not, again, to take away anything from them. I learned tons from every single teacher, and I have lots from all of them. Mark and I had a very close relationship at a time when I was really searching to get to the next step. So I think like those things that I was trying to do, with winning an audition, the attention to detail, the, just kind of being really tough on myself, like every, little vibrato shake, in my phrasing, where's it going, so most of, a lot of how I think about approaching music is, as far as that stuff goes, is from my time with Mark, because we just got so in depth at that time when I really was like, okay, I need to do this. So, I would say just mainly attention to detail. My ear, like the way that I hear things, is very tuned from my lessons with Mark. Like in the beginning, it was always really hard to play anything and get through it in my lessons. And it was always my goal to get my ear to a point where I heard the mistakes, and I thought that I could hear my mistakes and sneak them past Mark. Never quite got there, but at least I could hear my own mistakes and wasn't like shocked when Mark was like, "Oh, that's out of tune," or whatever. So he really helped me raise my level of hearing myself and understanding what I was doing to a completely different level. So honestly, there's like no part of my musicianship that hasn't been kind of shaped by that relationship. And then luckily I also had, Ransom and Josh and Gary and Jeff and I had all these other ideas also that I find myself calling on all the time. Sometimes there's a moment where I'm like, okay, this is a Josh Smith thing, and I find that all the time because, he's a very special player and mentor for me also. But unfortunately, I was 18 when I was an undergrad. So, stuff just goes over your head at that point. So I feel like I've learned more now looking back on those things than, but when I met Mark, I was, one or whatever. So I had a little more of my brain functioning. So
A little bit at least.
Yeah.
just a little bit more.
Yeah, for me with Mark, I'll just tell like a couple of stories that I think are illustrative. I met Mark at Aspen. I didn't get into his studio. I studied with Nadine, who's an amazing teacher, and I got so much out of that. Like she's, I valued both of my summers with Nadine and all the time I spent with her so much. But at the end of the summer, I took a couple lessons with Mark, and it was amazing. And then Jake was going to play Das Lied with St. Louis. Mark was playing principal. I don't know what Jake was playing, something else. And
like
17th flute, yeah, just somewhere down, assistant fifth. He was in the orchestra though. He did great job. And I was going to go out. I decided like I would go out and see Jake play and see Mark play Das Lied, and then also like take a bunch of lessons, like 6-7 hours of lessons in like 3 days. And it just so happened that I had won the concerto competition the year before. And it happened to be like the day before I went out was the concerto performance, right? And I was playing Ibert, and I was like 21 years old, and I thought I was so amazing. Like I'm playing Ibert concerto with the college orchestra, And I played it, and it was so fun. Like it was a great. Actually, Ransom Wilson was my conductor of the orchestra at Purchase, so it was like a really special experience, and it was a ton of fun. And I remember like being on top of the world, and I went to have this lesson with Mark, and Mark, you just saw him. Like he's such a nice guy, and like he's very not harsh, but he's very honest. And basically, like in the next 3 days, he kind of like showed me everything that was wrong that I was doing, and like how to kind of like rebuild the fundamentals of my flute playing. And he was 100% right. And it was like a real turning point in my development as a flutist. But like, I think it's so illustrative of then also what happened to me when I went to DePaul, like when I would like finish my undergrad and I like got into civic and I was feeling pretty great about myself. And then again, going into lessons with Mark and being like, okay, good job. You're sounding good. Like, here's what's wrong and here's how you fix it. And here's the work that needs to go into that. Him always just being so pragmatic and willing to work with you through that entire process, but always being really honest about and having really exacting standards. And that's something that I think certainly over the next 2 years with him, especially having like a really busy schedule sometimes, with 2 orchestras on top of school, on top of, I was taking auditions at that time. And, in Mark's studio, like there were no excuses, right? Like, you still had to learn your 2 etudes every week. You still had to learn, have your scales and thirds. You still had to have your 2 pieces, even if you had, you were playing Shasti 9 and had an audition that week. And like, that's good because that's how the real world is, right? Like if you have a lot on your plate, good for you. And that's great. You have to figure out a way to make it work or do less. So it was a difficult 2 years and I learned a ton, but I think it really prepared me in a unique way for the professional world and months like like these couple of months, like how we'll always have a few months here where it's just symphonic after symphonic, and even the off weeks are on weeks, and that's good.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you guys for sharing. That's amazing. So because you have had similar teachers and different teachers, I'm curious because you guys sit next to each other day after day in rehearsals. How is your playing similar and how is your playing different from one another? I'm curious, like what do you guys hear sitting next to each other?
I mean, I think we have a lot of similarities as far as tone goes. Like anybody, it's going to sound a little different, but we have a lot of, starting with Gary Shocker, like we have a lot of the same like sonic influences of just, what we're after for tone. I think about Gary's sound all the time, and so Mark's sound, obviously. So I think we end up like having a similar sonic ideal. And then, how that comes across is probably different for the listener, slightly in whatever ways, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like categorize anybody as, lyrical, technical, whatever, any kind of thing like that. I think if you're a flute player who does your thing, then you probably do all those things. And doing pretty well. So yeah, I don't know that I have any like specific differences, but I'm sure, you know, when the audience is always going to pick up on different, there's different personality things that are going to come across in your playing because you're a musician and you have different things to say. So, you know, I'm sure we say different things, but as far as sitting next to each other, you know, I think we have a pretty solid sound blend and all that stuff just because of our backgrounds.
I'll also say like part of my job, like a big part of my job is to blend, right? So like, you know, part of that is to like adapt my sound in a way that blends well with Jake's sound, which has not at all been a problem ever because we have very similar sound concepts and that's never been an issue. I would reiterate what Jake said though, that I think like, you know, like if it's solo or principal, like, yeah, we're both, I think we both have like pretty strong musical identities and obviously that's based in a lot of stuff that's complicated and so it's going to come out differently. But I think sound concept wise, we're pretty similar to my ear. But of course, you know, we're right in it. So maybe we're the least qualified people to answer that question.
No, I was just curious, just because you do have similar backgrounds and, you know, like what Jake said, you're going to have similar concepts of sound and ideas of the fundamentals and tone and things like that. And I would assume that because you've had similar educational upbringing, that is there. And I'm sure, and I'm glad you brought it up, Gabe, literally your job is to blend. And since you guys have like similar sounds and similar teachers, I would assume that meshing your sounds together would be that much easier. Yeah.
We also play not the same flute, but very close to the same flute. It's like we're both play Haynes. I have silver keys, Jake doesn't. That's the only difference.
Okay. Oh, cool. Very cool. So the question of the hour is, when you guys were young boys and you were practicing side by side, did you have like practicing challenges or did you have something fun that you would do?
Man, we didn't have social media when we were kids, you know. So practicing challenge, I don't think we didn't have that.
Exist. Yeah.
The challenge was just to practice. The challenge was our mom to get us to practice.
We had those metronomes that moved side to side.
No, we did have one of those, but we didn't really use that.
It was already vintage though.
It was like it was a shelf piece, you know.
Yeah, it was cool though.
So you can see mine. Shelf piece. It's up there. I don't know if you can see it, but you're like, it's a shelf piece. Literally, the triangle metronome is the shelf piece here.
I mean, they're awesome, but I honestly like when we were younger, I don't think we were like that, like regimented with what we like. I don't think we knew what we were doing at all, to be honest. So, you know, we just kind of played flute and we learned a lot of rep and
we had a lot of fun.
We were pretty separate in our educations, even though we studied with, you know, Gary at the same time, we weren't really doing the same thing. So
we always played in like we played in like the same youth orchestra, but never at the same time. Right? We were both in Philly Youth, but we never overlapped.
Yeah, Princeton Youth Orchestra, same thing.
So
it just kind of like, I don't think we were that. We didn't do like the no vibrato challenge or whatever, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately. It just depends on your approach.
But now you do the practicing challenges with each other in your 20s and 30s, right?
We still don't.
I don't think we've ever done a practice challenge.
Giving you guys such a hard time.
Unfortunately, no practice challenges. We do things that are like far stupider than that. You know,
that's true.
That's what I want to hear. What is it?
Our social media presence is more about memes than about even playing the flute. You know, so
playing Fawn 7 times in one breath challenge.
Right. Just really completely useless things. It's not even helpful. One time we did try to start a challenge called "Thank Your Teacher," and we thought it was a really good idea. And it was supposed to be like people. We were like, post a song, piece that you're playing, and like that reminds you of one of your teachers, and like give them credit. And we were like, oh, this is so nice. Everybody's going to want to credit their teachers, and literally nobody posted. And
we did it though. We thanked all of our teachers. You could go look at them. They're really nice tributes. They're like paragraphs long.
Yeah, and we were like, we're going to stick this out. And we were like, all right. We should have done like the stand on your toes challenge, and instead. We were like, oh, this would be nice. Like we could do a challenge, but like bring back attention to like music educators, like the people who taught you when you were 6 and stuff. And it was just like, no, not interested. Like, yeah, hold your flute backwards.
We don't understand social media at all.
yeah, huge misfire. But you know,
whatever. We can try. Maybe we'll try another one later.
Yeah.
The flute Star Wars memes, though, those really work. People love those.
Yeah, those are biggest thing. Those are biggest initiatives.
Yeah, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, you know?
That's right. Just like auditions, you know? A little less preparation, but...
Yeah.
0 to 0.111% effort.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I love that. Speaking of auditions, do you have... Besides breaking out in hives, you know, from not washing your clothes before an audition, do you have any other funny audition stories that you can recall? Or just, bizarro moments?
Yeah, none of them are funny besides that one. Yeah.
Or maybe not even funny, but just like, what the heck? You know, just like, what is this? This is so bizarro.
I'll never forget when I auditioned for college. Now, I'm not going to say the school, but I went in and the entire faculty of flute players was all sitting there just eating donuts the entire time during my audition. I was like so distracted the entire time. And like, they're just sitting, just eating. And I was like, all right, like I worked like a year and a half to get here, you know? Yeah, so that image always really stuck with me. So, you know, when you're taking an orchestra audition behind the screen, at least you can't see that everybody's eating donuts, you know?
They probably are, though.
They definitely are. Yeah, without a doubt, everyone's eating all the time. You never know. Yeah, that was shocking. But, you know, I'm sure they were paying attention to me and not the donuts.
That's funny.
You know, like every audition is different, and they're all like uniquely stressful and weird, and they're going to be idiosyncrasies and quirks. I guess my whole thing would be like, there's always something weird always happens at an audition. It's rare that something weird doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And like, hopefully you get to a point when you can look back and be like, okay, that was funny. But that's something you have to go through a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't really have any specific stories, but you know, you accrue this series of weird audition experiences, and then hopefully you get a couple of good ones in there too. You know, that's what we're all trying for.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Are you a flutist frustrated that your instrument doesn't accurately represent your artistic voice? We hear you. Not owning an instrument that will showcase your musical abilities and let your creative voice shine through can be frustrating. Let us help you change that. At the Carolyn Nesbaum Music Company, we have a team of flute specialists who have been working in the industry for decades, and they have the knowledge and the skill to help you find your dream instrument. They have a wide selection of piccolos, flutes, low flutes, and head joints to match your creative needs. To help you find your perfect instrument, call the Flute Shop at 972-985-2662 to schedule your flute trial today. Or visit their website at fluteforyou.com, where you can check out their instrument selection online. Follow the Flute Store through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter for the latest news and updates. The Carolyn Nesbaum Music Company is truly your one-stop flute shop. So in every talk, I always try to make sure that I bring tons of value to the Flute 360er and I meet them where they are. And I'm in discussion and conversation with them quite frequently. And the thing that keeps popping up through my DMs and emails lately is the topic of being comfortable in your own skin as a player. Like, how can you get there? How can you achieve that? I have some ideas. There's some, answers that I have given my listeners, but I would love to pick your brains under this realm. Jake, is there something specifically just that you've done, in stride of working towards being really comfortable in your own skin as a player? And what advice would you give somebody else?
I would say just fake it until you make it, the old adage, like a lot of the times I think, with students, you want to have something to say when you play, right? But maybe you don't exactly know how to say that, because just like if you're learning a new language, maybe you don't have the vocabulary yet, and I think when I was young, I was, and not even that young, but, college age and stuff, I thought that I wanted to do stuff. I wanted to have something to offer, but I didn't always know what to offer, as a player, because there's a lot going on, like there's rules to Bach and Mozart and this note has to be this length and all the, so all this stuff where I was just, there's so many things going around in your head that it can get really confusing. So I ended up just listening to a lot of flute players that I really loved and copying them, like just completely copying them. And I know that some people say don't copy. I would argue exactly the opposite and say copy. Try to sound exactly like your favorite flute players, and then try to sound like another one of exactly your favorite flute players, and then another one and learn all you can about their playing. Learn exactly the depth of their vibrato and how they get that sound that you really like, and then put it all together in a way that makes sense to you. And for me, I kind of would just pick a different flute player I really liked every couple of months until I felt like I was getting there, and just kind of experimenting in different styles and trying to sound like, Pahud or Dufour or Galway or, Mark Sparks or, whoever I was listening to at that time. And I really went through so many different flute players that I looked up to. Emily Bynan, I listened to her Mozart like 1,000 times. Just trying to see like, oh, how do they get that kind of spirit? And then when you get on stage, pretend that you know it all, go pretend that you're, the expert and you've really done it. And eventually, you'll start to feel a little bit more like you know what you're doing. But I guess like my main lesson that I've learned through being a professional flutist for, a while now and giving recitals and playing concertos and doing all the stuff that I thought when I was younger would make me know what I was talking about is you never know what you're talking about. Everybody's making it up all the time, even all these people that we look up to. And eventually, yes, you have a broader knowledge and you kind of, I know more about playing the flute and about classical music than I did when I was 18. But at the same time, I'm still experimenting and making it up as I go. And I would imagine so is everybody else who is a professional. So I think that just kind of give yourself permission to experiment, try new things, get on stage, try to, sound like your favorite flute player, try to pretend that you're, whoever you like to listen to and say, I have that confidence to give that type of performance. And, at the end of the day, like I was saying earlier, we're all ourselves. So you're never going to, even if you're trying to play like Pahud, you're not Pahud, you're not going to be him, so there's no risk there that anybody's going to be like, oh, that person thinks they're Pahud. It's like, oh, okay, that, that person is going to sound like them. So don't, study the greats, study your favorites, try to learn from we have so much information and recordings now. It's so accessible, Spotify, YouTube, all this stuff. You can, on my phone right now, I could listen to like so many amazing recordings of any piece that I want to learn. So, make sure you do that and get that in your ear. And then I would say that leads to self-confidence and starting to like have that in my head means that I actually know what I want to do in these moments now. And I can hear it because I've heard it before. I heard Ron Paul do it. I heard Galway or any of these flute players that I've listened to.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I love it.
I agree with all of that. I mean, I think that's really, like if you could do an impression of your three favorite flute players really well, like you're now a really great flute player, like you like somewhere in the middle, you'll find like your voice, but that's less of the issue. I would say do actually listen to great flute players, listen to all kinds of flute players, listen to non-flute players, listen to all kinds of music, because it'll make your ear better. Like it'll help with your intonation, but also like it shows you what's possible, which like I know is like in sense could make you feel insecure, but I think ultimately it'll make you feel better, right? Like one of the amazing things, I mean, Gary Shocker is an incredible musician on so many levels. But again, like Jake said, we were young when we were studying with him, and the big thing that I got from Gary was like being in the room with just like an incredible flute sound, in a way that like a lot of kids don't get, like at 12 or 13 years old, to like be in the room with like one of the greatest flutists of a generation and just hear like, oh, that's what a flute could sound like. Not that you have to sound like that. Not that any of us could ever sound like that, because Gary's like such an individual player and such a natural player. But I think, yeah, just like getting the great sounds in your ear. And then another thing is, this is a Nadine thing, is like, don't let yourself make mistakes, right? So like slow everything down to a level that you can play it, because that'll actually build your confidence, right? If you're practicing sloppy, if you're just running through stuff, then you get this kind of like ice skating feeling that a lot of us get, especially a lot of us when we're younger and we're learning. You want to play the Prokofiev Sonata, but you can't play it. But like you're just going to play it up the tempo and just keep going. So like, don't let yourself make mistakes. Feel really grounded in every note. And that's gonna help you connect more with your sound, with your instrument. Yeah. And then I think just like more broadly, just remember that like after all of your preparation, after all of your listening, when you go to play for an audience, like they're not there to judge you. They're there to connect with you, right? They're there to have a musical experience. And you're there to share that with them. So, just keeping that in the back of your mind and kind of letting go of all of the preparation, letting go of everything you did, just like kind of trusting in your training and just being like, okay, I'm here to communicate something. Again, like Jake said, even if you don't really know what that is, even if you're young and you're like, I don't really know what my message is. Maybe it's a half form message. Like that's okay too. Because part of figuring out what your message is going to be doing it, right? You can't become a great performer without having a lot of performances. You don't learn that in a practice room, right? You learn that on stage.
Yeah. No, I love everything. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. So I don't know if you know, but when I wrap up Flute 360 Conversations, we do a last segment called Picks, and it could be anything under the sun. It could be your pick for favorite book, TV show, movie, whatever you want to share.
So we can pick anything that we like
in the world.
Anything you want to share to the listeners, like, oh my gosh, you guys have got to read this title.
Oh, wow.
Or it could be your favorite app on your phone, something fun, something goofy, just humanizing our conversation.
All right. Well, real quick, I just want to, Gabe mentioned it earlier, but I want to shout out Haynes really quick because they brought us all together today. And I just saw it on Facebook, which is not my pick. I don't pick Facebook. But I saw on Facebook that I got my flute 10 years ago today. I was in my master's.
Today?
Or maybe like 3 days ago, something like that. And I had this flute because I remember Steve Finley was so excited about my flute because he worked on finishing it and he loved it. He drove from Boston to New Haven to bring me my flute. And so the picture popped up of me and Ransom and Steve. And and I've literally never changed a head joint. I haven't done anything. I just kept it in good shape. And it's been just, my favorite instrument I've ever played. So thank you, Haynes, for that. And obviously for all that they've done for my career and now for Gabe as well. So it's a great instrument. And the great thing about Haynes is they have amazing level, instruments on all levels. Like the Q2s are amazing. Like, so any budget they have like these really just high quality instruments that anybody can afford, which I think is super important.
We both played Haynes when we were kids too. Like not like kids, but like when we were like I was like in high school, I played a Haynes. We both played like a kind of like a mid student Haynes or I don't remember the model now. It was a long time ago, but so it's not like we've been Haynes people forever.
Oh,
big
cool.
Big Haynes guys.
Yeah. I even only use Haynes ketchup. I know it's not the same company, but still.
Just wearing Haynes t-shirts. Gabe's not washing them though.
Right. So you've had your Haynes flute now, Jake, for 10 years, you said?
Yeah.
And then how long for you, Gabe?
Let's see. I got it right when I guess in my first year of my master's. So that would have been 6 years ago, I would say.
Cool.
6 years. I'd have to double check the date. I got mine from Adam Flutistry. He came to Chicago with like many giant suitcases full of flutes, which was awesome. All the Paul flutes tried a bunch of flutes, and he was super helpful during that process. It's a great shop if you're in the area, or I guess if you're not in the area.
Yeah, cool. So how did you come to your instrument, Gabe? How did you decide this is my flute?
I just tried all the flutes that he had, and I played them for Mark. I played them for my studio mates. I don't know. It was a while. It was pretty clear. It was pretty obvious. It just felt the best. Yeah. It was like, it wasn't an agonizing decision. I never really like switched out head joints or any of that stuff. Like I always kind of had a flute. I guess I switched out my head joint once on my old Haynes. So that's not necessarily true. But since I got this, I was like, I want one thing that's going to work for everything that I don't have to worry about messing with. So yeah, I guess it's a boring story. It was just like it just felt right. It was the right one. It sounded good.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, Jake, because that was going to be like my last question of the interview. So great minds think alike. But no, thank you for that. And yeah, I know Haynes and the team are fantastic and fabulous. And you guys are both Haynes artists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, they're a great company and have incredible instruments, more importantly than anything. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I guess my pick is just like what I'm reading now, which is for the second time. I'm reading the 3 Body Problems series by Cixin Liu. I might be mispronouncing that. So it's like a sci-fi series. I'm just a big reader. It's like there's aliens involved, and it kind of jumps through time. I have like a little book club with some of my colleagues in the symphony, so we've been reading that, and it's a fun. I don't know. It's good. I think it's good to like read stuff that kind of gets you like out of your comfort zone, expands your mind a little bit. And this series definitely does. It goes like kind of all the way to the end of the universe. And it's interesting reading something by a Chinese author, kind of just like the writing style. It's obviously translated, but the writing style is very different. I don't think I've ever read something by a Chinese author. You get like a different history as well. It's interesting seeing a lot of the references that he'll put in. Will be like Chinese cultural or historical references. And then there'll be like a little note, that maybe like everyone in China would know what that is. But then that kind of like sparks some curiosity to be like, oh, like this random author that, would be like the Dickens of China, maybe, right? Like we wouldn't have to get an explanation, but then I'm going to go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole and like read about this person and kind of learn a little bit more. So yeah, that's my pick. 3 Body Problem. Great book, great series. I think it's pretty appropriate for maybe not all ages, but maybe if you're like over the age of 15, I would say it's probably fine.
No, that's awesome. And it's so funny that you said that. I could see you, Gabe, just like, okay, Googling, who is this Chinese author or reference? Yeah, I would have to do that too.
I should Google pronunciations also. When we met for the last book, everyone was just like just mangling all the names, but we all got through it anyway.
I see. Fun times. And Jake?
Something that I'm really excited about is the Lakers Warriors basketball series. So that's my pick for the week. Yeah, I'm very.
Are the Lakers and Warriors in the finals? Is that what's going on?
They're not in the finals. It's like still so far from the finals. It's going to go on for months, and it's going to be incredible. And also, I would say Death and Transfiguration by Strauss. We're playing that this week, and really excited. It's one of the best symphonic works. And I think it's one of the more approachable Strauss works. And I know that a lot of people, in the flute world, maybe you do a lot of cool flute stuff, but maybe you haven't experienced, some of the great orchestral works. So I would say check that out. It's really incredible music, and it's important, to know our history. So I think,
great flute part too.
Great flute part.
Yeah.
No excerpts or anything, but just incredible writing. So I always, with my students, always try to encourage them to make sure they know this repertoire, because it'll inform anything that you play. There's a lot of Strauss in anything that came after it. He's a very influential composer. So
cool.
I would say check it out.
Yeah, great picks. I love it. So before we wrap up and say our goodbyes, is there anything else that you want to add to this conversation? Because a lot of times what will happen is I'll say, all right, guys, see you later. And then usually the guest is like, whoa, we're actually done. I wanted to say ... So I don't want to pull the rug out from underneath your feet. I want to give you space to say anything that you want to, but we did cover a lot today.
Oh, I'll say a thing kind of off of, maybe a little bit off of Jake's. And this isn't actually like a plug for any orchestra in general, but I would encourage flute students, wherever you are, to go see what your local orchestra is doing. Even if you haven't seen them before, go try to see them. Because I know that's something we did a lot when we were kids. We were involved in the Philly Youth Orchestra, and we would see the Philadelphia Orchestra quite a lot, and that was really influential. And wherever if you live in a mid-sized to large city, there's probably a symphony, and they're probably playing some stuff, and they have a flutist. You can hear a live flute. Sometimes you can't always get to a flute recital. Sometimes there's not a flute recital to see. But there's probably a symphony, and there, you could probably go see some live music. I think it's good. I think it's good. It's good for people of any level. So yeah. And then of course, also we're orchestra musicians. So it's a good thing to do. It's also a fun night, even if you're not a student, if you're just a person, just an adult.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're a musician and you're not regularly experiencing music, then I don't know what to say to you, I guess.
I just say go see some music.
I think there's a big missed opportunity there. And I know that with so many people that I've come into contact with who just don't experience that much music, so maybe they see it, you just teach, and you're exhausted and for me too, I play and I'm exhausted. So it's hard. I'm like, I don't want to go see this concert, but you have to, otherwise, you lose touch with what you're doing in the first place. So, make sure when there's always great chamber music, great orchestra, great stuff going on, make sure that you get out there and see it. You pretty much never leave being like, I wish I had stayed home.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I also wanted, I don't know if I've said this in any interviews, but I always talk about Civic and Mark and Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, during my master's. But one of the most influential things about being in Chicago for 2 years is I did miss a couple, but almost every week I would go see the Chicago Symphony, because we, part of the deal with Civic is we get free tickets. And that was so influential. That is so influential in making me obviously Stefan is just a top level flutist, but it doesn't matter if your principal flutist is Stefan or whoever. Just getting to see an orchestra, it was so influential. Just hearing that high level music making, just seeing week in and week out what it's like. Yeah, and just kind of being a little bit of a part of that.
Yeah, no, I love it. Great reminders and great advice for sure. And even when you don't want to go, like you said, Jake, you're tired, you have hobbies, you have a family, you have friends, you have a life, and you see the schedule, but not just for your betterment as a musician to grow and to hear and be exposed to the music, but then to also support your music colleagues too. Yeah. And, you guys were a fine example of that, driving to Denton to see Mark Sparks, when we all kind of accidentally ran into each other at the UNT performance. And, you went out to support your teacher. And I'm sure you guys had long rehearsal days or whatever was on your docket. But you were there, and it was an amazing recital.
It was. Yeah.
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 No,
I've been a lot further to see Mark.
every guest flute player pretty much who's comes into town. I usually try to get out there if I don't have a concert. Yeah, so just because I'm going to learn something. So anyway, all right, I have to go, but it's been lovely, and thank you so much for having us. And my other pick is Flute 360. So
nice,
everybody, check it out. I mean, you are checking it out if you're hearing this. But thank you so much, Heidi, for everything you do for the community and for sharing all this incredible information with everybody and taking so much time out of your busy schedule to do all of this for the flute community. So we really appreciate you and thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been really fun.
Oh my goodness, you guys just made me blush, and you couldn't have left the conversation with a better statement. So thank you. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And we'll see each other soon, and have a great day.
Definitely. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. If you want to be a part of a flute community that you can call your own, please join me and other 360ers in our private Facebook group. Here, we hold discussions that matter to you, share our latest victories, and support each other through our musical endeavors. All you have to do is click the link below to join our private Facebook group called Flute 360 Family. Thanks! Let's talk about flute.